We are now only 1 week away from the fantasy football playoffs. And maybe if you're in a 4-week playoff league, your fantasy football playoffs start this week. So we need to make sure your lineups are getting set correctly. Today, we are going through our rest of season running back and wide receiver rankings in one show. Now, how we're going to do this is we are going to fly through our top 40 running backs that we have placed into tiers, and we're going to do the exact same thing for the wide receiver position. This isn't going to be super in-depth on 80 different players. We'd probably be here for like 3 hours if we were trying to do that. So what we're going to do is pick a few highlight players from each tier to touch on and keep things moving, mostly because you don't want to hear us jibber-jabber about players who have just kind of been giving you the same production week over week over week. Now we want to talk about some bigger names, some bigger headlines, if you will, for each player. In the S tier for the running backs, though, not a ton of quote-unquote headline names for us to cover, Cameron. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, Devon Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson. Those guys are all headliners in and of themselves. You and I both have Christian McCaffrey at RB1 rest of season. If you were to pick a dark horse out of this tier to finish as the overall RB1 rest of season, who would your pick be?
I think it's going to be Devon Achane. If I had to pick one, he's got one of the easiest behind McCaffrey for one of the easiest schedules left on the season. And the usage he's just been getting, especially in the receiving game lately, really over the entire season, but especially lately, it's just been insane. So he would be my pick. I mean, obviously, any of these guys, right? He's probably the most biggest dark horse out of the...
Such a poor word to use,
yes,
but...
especially when you're talking about Jonathan
Taylor. When you talk about the second guy?
100%. It's just... Gibbs has the 29th ranked schedule, Bijan 30th, and Jonathan Taylor 23rd. So they do have tougher schedules. So that's why I'd go with Achane for the guy.
Yeah,
McCaffrey to finish number one.
Yeah. My next pick would be Devon Achane as well. Mostly because I think if you were to watch the New Orleans Saints game on Sunday, Devon Achane ripping off obviously a big score in that game. I think a lot of people just kind of like relegate Achane to this like speedy pass catcher, but like, I'm sorry, he's more than that at this point. Like he does run with some toughness. Josh Norris and Hayden Winks, excuse me, were pointing this out on their show, right? Where he's more than just the speedster on the outside at this point. Even the greats, Jamal Charles and Chris Johnson in their historic seasons, they're more than just speedsters, right? They have to run with some aggression. They have to run in between the tackles. So I just want to make sure we give Devon Achane his flowers there, because I agree with the schedule he has coming up. I think it is totally possible he ends up leapfrogging Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor, if you really want to put him ahead of Achane, to be the RB1 rest of season. Quickly, before we dive on into the A tier, just again, want to acknowledge that 80% of you all who watch our videos still aren't subscribed to our channel. So we can quick change that. It's 100% free. It's one of the easiest ways to support us. Hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is up. As much as we're giving you fantasy football insights, rest of season rankings to help you win your leagues, we want to remind you of the fun and camaraderie that comes with fantasy football along the way. Cam, Tyler, and I all met playing fantasy. Well, we met at college and then we played fantasy football. And that's how we all really bonded over our friendship. So we want to remind you of the fun and joy that does come with the game of fake football that we all play as well. Let's pivot to the A tier here, making up of Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Bucky Irving, Travion Henderson, Kyron Williams, and Derrick Henry. I think it's no surprise that Josh Jacobs and James Cook are in this tier, and you could even argue that James Cook should probably be at the top of this tier. I won't fight you on that one. That's why we put these guys into tiers. But Cam, Bucky Irving in his first game back already finding himself in the A tier. Are you that optimistic on him rest of season?
Yeah, because the worry is gets injured week 4 and then comes back, and it's how are they going to ease him back in? They didn't ease him back in. They gave him 17 carries, another 2 targets in the receiving game, and sure, he wasn't overly efficient, but we saw 15.1 half PPR fantasy points. This is a dude who hasn't hit single digit fantasy points in half PPR formats all season long. So yeah, the confidence of this is going to continue. They did the first week back. I say you just trust Bucky like he never left, essentially, is where I'm going to rank him rest of the year.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing that I wanted to see with Bucky Irving upon his return. Is Sean Tucker going to stay involved? Is Rachaad White going to stay involved? And I think you nailed it. You just continue ranking Bucky like he never left. If he's going to find the end zone, I understand the passing attack of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is struggling, but if he's going to score touchdowns, even on low efficiency, he's going to find himself in this same ranges of the Kyron Williams, right? The Derrick Henrys of the world right now, which, again, putting Derrick Henry in that same conversation maybe feels a little bit crazy with the schedule he also has coming up. We'll touch on him momentarily, though. I want to do a quick bit on TreVeyon Henderson because I'm still seeing platforms out there like hesitating to rank TreVeyon Henderson as a top 10 running back rest of season. I just don't fully understand what we're doing here. And that's not to call you out, Cameron, by any means, because in our rest of season consensus, you have him at running back 11, but I'm pushing him all the way up to running back 8. We are talking about the easiest strength of schedule for running backs rest of season. I understand he's on bye in week 14. That might impact things a little bit, but we've been waiting for this breakout all season. When Ramondre Stevenson came back, it was still the TreVeyon Henderson show. So I don't know what we're waiting for here. We've been waiting to get excited about TreVeyon Henderson all season. Why are we not just like going balls to the walls, going nuts, pushing this guy as far up in our rankings as humanly possible? I think, again, like James Cook, Josh Jacobs is kind of that breaking point for me. But when I look at like Bucky Irving, Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry, all the guys we're going to talk about in the B tier who are great options as well, I just look at TreVeyon with the schedule and the explosiveness that he has, and I'm like, how do I not rank this guy top 8, which is where I have him rest of season?
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge we are recording this pre-Monday Night Football. So
thank you. I got too excited to mention that.
Yep, exactly. So,
so
I
he
just
goes
want
up
to
a dud.
I just want to make sure
everything I said.
Yes, and that's honestly my concern is just I don't trust Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels to use him in the way that you should use TreVeyon Henderson rest of the season. Maybe they will, and they should because they've played winning football with him. But that's my biggest concern. I still have him as a top 12 running back, and like you said, probably a little bit low, probably too cautious with TreVeyon. I still think he's phenomenal. I think, like you said, he's got the Giants tonight, which you will have seen, and then Buffalo and Baltimore right out of the break, and the Jets. It's kind of like, yeah, that's a league winning, playoff winning stretch right there for TreVeyon. So I definitely see the optimism. I guess I've just been waiting for it all year long that I don't want to get my hopes up again on TreVeyon and then have him crushed by Vrabel and McDaniels.
TreVeyon goes berserk on Monday night. 180 total yards and 2 scores. Where do you rank him?
Oh, well, I mean, I probably put him ahead of Kyron and Derrick.
In your rankings, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably I probably have him essentially where he's at in our consensus rankings.
Okay.
Like,
this is how you still want to put him ahead of Bucky, though?
No, just because, like I said, Bucky's still averaging 17.6 half PPR fantasy points a game.
Yeah.
And we saw it last year, and he came back and got all the usage. So I just know exactly what I'm getting with Bucky. So I think that's the reason I'm trusting him a little bit more than TreVeyon.
Sure. Which, again, I get. I get people don't want to push all the chips in on TreVeyon, and I'm just like, nope, it's here. I've been waiting on it all season. I'm putting all my chips in. This is exactly what I've been waiting for. So I'm just less hesitant to do that on a guy like TreVeyon that I have just been pounding the drum for all season long. Last player I want to talk about in this tier, Cameron, let's touch on Derrick Henry, because his usage with the Baltimore Ravens has been flabbergasting, I'll say, recently. You look at how he's used, even in a game against the Cincinnati Bengals, he is used heavily and often in the first few drives of the game. He rips off a big touchdown run right away to put the Ravens up. He only finishes the game with 10 freaking carries. I understand the schedule is soft, but for me, the usage is kind of scary here for Derrick Henry, because I don't know why they ride the big dog early in the game, and then as they get deeper into the third, fourth quarter, it's like he almost just evaporates.
Yeah, I still think he's getting enough, like since week 6, 24, 21, 19, 20, 18, 21 carries. So I still think that for me, this feels like the anomaly. The worrisome part, though, is Lamar has not looked like Lamar.
No.
So you're not going to get the games where they're up by a ton, and they're just going to use Derrick, which is what you were hoping when you saw Pittsburgh, Cincinnati on the schedule coming up, that they were going to be able to get up big in these games and just rely on Derrick Henry. So that in and of itself is a little worrisome, right? You play New England as well. If New England gets up on you big, then obviously it's not a Derrick Henry game. So I understand it from that perspective, but I still have him as my running back 8 because I just think if they want any chance to make the playoffs right now, it goes through Derrick Henry. And I think they realize that. I think they realize Lamar looks off. And I'm expecting them to go back committing to the run against Pittsburgh in week 14.
Well, and I hope they do, right? You just saw James Cook carve them up for 120 plus yards, right? I didn't even look at what his total. I last I saw was 124 yards, and then I didn't check again because I knew he was just going to absolutely gash them.
144.
140. I was going to say I thought it was right around 150. Yeah, talked about that in one of our short form videos that I dropped this week. In terms of how James Cook just thrives in zone scheme runs, and Pittsburgh has just been getting attacked in that scheme all season long. So, yeah, hopefully they can take a piece of what Buffalo did last week against them and make it a good old AFC North ground and pound game where Derrick Henry really gets to shine. Let's jump to the B tier now. Again, we're flying through these players. I understand if there's a player that you have a take on in these tiers that we're not covering, drop it down in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear what you all think about these rankings, what you would change, what you wouldn't change, what you like, what you don't like, etc. So let us know down below. But the B tier is made up of Ashton Genty, Saquon Barkley, Chase Brown, Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, and Breece Hall. Let's first talk about Ashton Genty here, because my goodness, this Las Vegas Raiders team is pitiful. I mean, it's flat out embarrassing. They have two players at luxury positions that they couldn't afford to take. I said this about Brock Bowers. It's not that I didn't like Brock Bowers. It's not that I didn't like this offense getting an elite weapon. It's the fact that you took a tight end at a luxury position, and this team is taking steps backwards. You take a guy like Ashton Genty this year. Okay, great. But you have so many other players. Armand Membu versus Ashton Genty almost doesn't seem like a question now at this point with how bad the Raiders' offensive line is. I understand Colton Miller and Jackson Powers Johnson have been dealing with injuries, but I digress. It's not like it was good. It's not like it was good before they got injured either. What the heck are we doing with Ashton Genty rest of season? At this point, you're praying he gets 8 targets a week like he did this last week against the Chargers.
Yeah, 3 straight weeks, 8 targets. Has seen 5+ receptions in 4 of the last 5 games. I don't know. It's obviously concerning. His yards per carry is just disgusting. Since week 6, 3.3 yards per carry, then 3.5, 3.2, 3.2, 1.2 against Dallas, 2.9, and then 2.1 yards per carry last week. That's not good. Hasn't cleared 3.5 yards per carry since week 6. And I just don't think it changes. We haven't seen the big run. And that's what you were hoping for when you took Ashton Genty, was you were understanding it's going to be gross like this most of the time because the offensive line is so bad. But hopefully we can get those big runs. You know, he can start breaking away on those. And he just hasn't. And with Denver, Philly, and Houston coming up, it just doesn't really feel like it truly is. So the receiving game has really been what's saving him. And honestly, like, I think you can bank on it just because they have to at this point. They have no other choices. They, like you said, it's Brock Bowers and Genty. That's it. That's all they have in this offense. And it's not like Gino's got time to throw. So you're hoping for volume. We maybe have him too high. He might be one next week that we're just like, he's just here because of name value and we need to move him down. And I could totally see that happening.
You're being pumped up on the receiving game, right? I mean, that's literally what it is right now. You're being saved by that. I mean, because even still with the 8 catches last week, 2 weeks ago, excuse me, against Cleveland, right? Still gave you an RB5 finish on the week. Week 10, RB14, week 9, RB5. You have the 2 games of RB37 and RB31 in there. So I don't think Ashton Genty is like a complete throwaway piece because goodness, at least they're finally getting him involved in the receiving game like I thought they were going to do all the way back in like week 4 when they finally got their feet underneath them. But just so happens this team has been so bad that they couldn't even do that. I know the next player I have on our doc to talk about is Chase Brown, but I want to touch on Saquon Barkley here quick. Because my, oh my, what a fall from grace here. This team just flat out can't run the football. And as much as they want to try and make themselves a pass first team, they can't win any freaking football games when they're a pass first team. So I just want to name, like, if you're a Saquon Barkley manager and you are concerned rest of season, if you're like in the playoffs and you're like, okay, Saquon Barkley can't take me to a championship like I drafted him to be, like I thought he initially could. I mean, he hasn't given you a finish better than the RB20 since their bye week.
Yeah,
he's just abysmal. And like, I know I talked about Derrick Henry only getting 10 carries, but geez, Saquon Barkley only has 3 games of 20 plus carries this year. Week 12, 10 carries. Week 13, 13 carries, 22 and 56 rushing yards in those games. I mean, it's just I talk about the Raiders' offensive line. I mean, their offensive line is miles and miles worse. Do not get me wrong. Do not hear what I'm not saying. But we want to talk about a fall from grace in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles' offensive line. Golly, they cannot run block for Saquon this year.
Yeah, it's been really concerning. I was concerned about regression with Saquon because just being an older running back coming off these carries. But even to this point, right, you just didn't expect it. And he was kind of propped up by the touchdowns earlier in the season. And now you're not even getting touchdowns. And it's just, I don't know. It is a little concerning. Getting Washington and Buffalo in the last 2 weeks is maybe your saving grace with Saquon. Right. I think that's why we still have him so high. He still is the guy though that he can break one at any time, and we know that. That's why you have him this high. And like you said, they have to figure it out if they want to win, especially in the playoffs. So you got to imagine they're going to try and go back to Saquon, but I don't know.
It's not like it was working early in the season.
Yeah, vibes are just so off and feel like they finally got AJ Brown involved, but then they've lost their last 2 games. So it's like, what's the formula there? It doesn't feel like they really have one.
Yeah, right. And I think week 14, 15 will be definitely telling for this team. But want to do a quick bit there because fully recognize Saquon has been incredibly woeful, yet he sits in this B tier, and I think you could make a case for. I would listen to a case for a guy like Chase Brown to finish ahead of Saquon Barkley rest of the season with the volume that he's getting in the receiving game. Is that sustainable rest of the season in your mind with Joe Burrow being back, or was his spike in targets again this last week against the Ravens kind of a product of T. Higgins being out?
I feel like it should be a spike, but this is what we saw last year.
Oh, it is. Right.
And the offense is really, especially when Burrow's in, it's just Higgins, Chase. And so it's, I don't think it's going away. I think this is just what they're going to have, especially seeing they got Baltimore again in 2 weeks. They got Buffalo next week, then Miami, Arizona. Yeah.
It's so juicy.
I got to imagine you don't go away from them, and you're going to, right. They let Burrow throw the ball last game. But you want to protect him a little bit at the same time, like even if he is throwing a little quicker passes here and there. So yeah, I don't think this is a fluke. I think if anything, the touchdowns are going to come back, and you're going to be very happy with Chase Brown down the stretch.
I was going to say, and you're looking at the carries too coming out of the bye, right? They've started to turn back and say, oh no, we should actually maybe make Chase Brown our priority at running back. 18 carries, 19 carries, 15 carries, 75 plus yards in all 3 of those games. He's averaging well over 5 yards per carry in those games, 5.5, 5.6, 5.2. And again, the receiving work is there as well, which is probably the most important thing. You look at his last 4 games, 14 targets, 8 targets, 4 targets, 7 targets as well. When this team gets Joe Burrow back and they find themselves in scoring position, they're chasing points. It's more opportunity, like you said, for Chase Brown to see the touchdowns fall back his way. So yeah, Chase Brown is one of these guys, like, honestly, if you're going to pick one guy to leapfrog up into the A tier by the end of the season, I think Chase Brown might be the top of this tier in terms of making that happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's we're going to move on to the C tier again. Plenty of things to talk about with Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, Breece Hall, but the story is kind of the same. They are the apparent ones in their offenses. The schedules are fine, not wonderful. You're going to get valuable RB2 production, borderline RB1 maybe production out of them rest of the season. That's kind of the narrative you can tell with those 3. Moving on to the C tier, it's Amari Hampton, RJ Harvey, Quinshon Judkins, DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Walker, Jalen Warren, and Rico Dowdle wraps out this year, which I think some people are going to find a bit shocking. I want to start with Amari and Hampton first, though. We're going to do both ends of this tier because, again, everybody in the middle of this tier, it's like they're the one, but it's nothing exciting, right? It's all like your mid RB2s here, but Amari Hampton is a guy we've seen perform at a top 15 level this year, and Rico Dowdle is as well. That's why I want to focus on these 2 guys. Amari Hampton, though, what is your level of confidence that when he comes back, they just give him the reins back right away, and that Kamani Vidal still doesn't kind of leak into his production and his usage?
That's the reason he's down here. It's hard to put a number on it because we just don't know what he physically looks like. We don't know if it's like Bucky Irving, where it's he's completely back. We're going to use him like, he is that guy. If he's like that, if he's fully healthy, they're ready to go, no restrictions, nothing, then I think we could see similar usage to what Bucky saw. I'm not saying all of a sudden he's up in the A tier, but I think that's that similar usage. My concern is they're going to work him back in. He's going to be a little way more 50-50 as far as carries, not just snaps with Kamani Vidal, at least in week 1. So honestly, I have it at 50-50. I have it if he's, you just can't tell because we're not there. We're not watching the practices. We're not in those conversations of, hey, this is where Omarion Hampton's at health-wise, right? Just because we haven't seen him on the field since week 5. So we have no idea what's going on with that. But I think you'll know after week 1 pretty quickly of what it's going to look like, at least for the first couple of weeks of your fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, because my guess is that we are going to get Omarion Hampton back in week 14 here.
Mm-hmm.
And my guess is that you're probably going to get a clear 55-45 between these two backs. And I think you'll start to see it ramp up, to a 60-40 Omarion Hampton, a 65-35 Omarion Hampton. I think you're going to see that ramp up slowly, but I still find it hard to believe that Kamani Vidal is just going to be kind of leaked out after the production he's been able to give this team. I mean, again, another 120 rushing yards against the Raiders this last week. He's been on this. If you're a good fantasy football analyst, you'll recognize that he's on an every other week pattern right now. Obviously, we're not going to trace that trend and make any meaning out of it. But point being in that is saying, hey, Kamani Vidal has had some really freaking good games. I don't know if it's just Omarion Hampton comes back and he just takes a stranglehold on this job again. We'll have to see. My guess is that they slowly give it back to Hampton, but I think that's why he's down in this C tier, despite at some points during the season he's been probably like top of the B tier, knocking on the door of the A tier. Again, want to go down to the end of this tier because, again, the narrative we can tell with RJ Harvey, Quinshon Judkins, Swift, Walker, Warren, they all have lead roles in their offense to some capacity. They all have flaws to some capacity. It'll take a lot to iron out each of those flaws. But Rico Dowdle is the one name that, again, has been giving us A-tier production. In some games, he has been giving you S-tier production. Yet, you and I need to have a slugfest here because Ty isn't here to sort out our differences. You have Rico Dowdle, rest of season, as your running back 28. I have him as my rest of season RB 21. Ty is in the middle. He can't settle this difference between us, so you and I are just going to have to go to war right now. I'm going to be frank with you, if I can be frank with you, and my name's not even Frank. I think you're being way too harsh on this last week with what we saw from Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard.
I am concerned that this is a true hot hand backfield and that Rico just been hot, but these last couple weeks haven't quite lived up to that. And they finally went more 50-50 with Chuba Hubbard. And he saw the same amount of carries and nearly doubled. Not nearly doubled, but saw a decent amount more rushing yards. And not only that, he played 59% of the snaps to Rico's 42. So he outsnapped him by a considerable amount. That's what worries me is you're going into a bye now. I think we come out of it and this is a true split. And I know Carolina's been playing good, but they've also had some stinkers. And moving forward, you get New Orleans and Tampa in a must-win for Tampa, and then you go to then you play Seattle. So I'm just worried that we got a 50-50 split in a team that's not going to score a ton of touchdowns. I understand they put up 31 against the Rams. I get it. But you can also look at the San Francisco game. So that's my worry with them, is I understand he's got the upside. I just don't know if he's going to see it anymore if they're going to go back to Chuba and kind of swing this 50-50.
So my counter argument to that is we could talk about Chuba when he gets a hot hand. We've seen what it's like when Rico Dowdle gets the hot hand, though, right? It's been the RB1 overall on given weeks. And I'm not saying Chuba doesn't possess that, but based on what we've seen from Rico Dowdle, and even still this last week, Chuba Hubbard got 20 opportunities? And based on what we've seen from him, there's no way I can't put him outside of my top 24 running backs right now because of what we've already seen this season. And if he's still going to get 20 opportunities, those 20 opportunities have to be worth something because this team isn't the Tennessee Titans, right? It's not Tony Pollard's 20 opportunities when he used to get 20 opportunities, and Rico Dowdle's 20 opportunities are two very different things, right? I think we can all say at this point, Rico Dowdle is the better NFL running back than Tony Pollard.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But again, I'm open to gradually decreasing my ranking if it is a Chuba Hubbard pendulum swing, because I have Chuba in the same area that you and Ty do in terms of your rest of season rankings. You have Chuba at 30. I have Chuba at 30. Ty has Chuba at 28. So we're all right in the same range there. I don't think I'm ready to punish Rico Dowdle for one pendulum swing in the opposite direction when, again, if we're talking a hot hand approach, I think that hot hand pendulum could swing right back his way, and he could end up being a difference maker still rest of season if he does get the hot hand for even 2 out of those 3 games. Again, the games that you brought up, Seattle, nobody wants to run against Seattle. That one, I think Rico and Chuba are going to be flex plays at best that week. But with what we've seen out of Rico, I'm just not ready to push him down that far when the pendulum could just swing back in his direction as well. Let's keep it on moving here because we still got 2 tiers of the running backs to cover, man, oh man. The D tier, Woody Marks, Trey Benson, Kyle Monangai, Chuba Hubbard, Tyrone Tracy, Chris Rodriguez Jr., Kareem Hunt, Jordan Mason, David Montgomery. Our fullest tier thus far, but also the guys that you kind of look at and you're like, they might hit my flex spot this week. That's kind of the theme of this tier. But most importantly, Cameron, from when we did our rest of season rankings 2 weeks ago, we've got new challengers approaching here. How about Kyle Monangai making his debut in our rest of season rankings? I don't think people realize how good Kyle Monangai has been since the Bears started finally establishing the run game. I mean, can Monangai sustain his production that he's been putting out there recently? I'm working on pulling up the box score for him right now because I don't want to misspeak, but I am pretty sure he has finished as a top 30 running back in 4 straight weeks.
He has, and he had a top or in 5 straight weeks actually. He was running back 3 against Cincinnati, but he's had 4 touchdowns in 4 straight games.
Yep.
12 plus carries in the last 3, 54% of snaps 2 weeks ago, 45% of snaps this last game. This is a true split backfield at this point. And Kyle Monangai is running like he owns the backfield. The only game he didn't run well in was against Minnesota. Other than that, he's had over 4 yards per carry since week 9. So it's good to see. You don't get much of the receiving work, but at the same time, he is the David Montgomery right now for Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson he's trying to make it again. All right. Obviously, DeAndre Swift is nowhere near Jahmyr Gibbs. So it's going to be a little more split. They're going to do a little more on the ground. And in Philly, which felt like this is not a great matchup, they came out and just ran the rock over and over and over again and did a very successful 5.9 yards per carry for Kyle Monangai. Yeah, I don't think he necessarily overtakes Swift by the end of the season, but I think he's pretty solidified in this tier for sure. And maybe we're talking about him next week after another big week, especially against the Packers up in that C tier.
Yeah, he could easily find himself in that C tier. You want to take a crack at where Kyle Monangai has been in total fantasy points since week 6?
Oof, running back 20?
Running back 14.
Wow.
Total points.
Woo.
Yeah. He has been absolutely killing it. Kyle Monangai has been the RB 21 in points per game during that stretch. So you were pretty much spot on in terms of points per game, but overall, Kyle Monangai, the RB 14 since the Bears bye week. He's a guy where if you have him on your roster, he's becoming a flexible piece every week. No questions asked, especially with correct me if I'm wrong, he does have a few decent matchups coming up. You got Green Bay, Cleveland, Green Bay. Okay, I lied. I take that back. Those are just pretty stout matchups. But that's what you're worried about with Kyle Monangai. That's why we're not uber hyper aggressively ranking him, because you do have some tough matchups coming up. But hey, we said that about Philly and they ran the rock all over them. So TBD, Ben Johnson might be having his way here with his running game. We already did our bit on Chuba Hubbard here, kind of talking about the dynamic between him and Rico Dowdle. We could go more in depth on that, but then it seems like we're just kind of rerunning the same talk over and over and over again. So what I'll have us do instead is, of the rest of the players in this tier, we just talked about Kyle Monangai potentially being the guy to make a leap into the C tier. Pick one more guy out of this tier that you think has the best chance to do so.
Trey Benson. It might just be because he's an unknown compared to the other guys in this tier.
Sure.
Right? We know where they're standing.
It could be a boat, right?
Exactly.
But the mystery box. I don't know what's in it, but it could be a boat.
That's true. Jacoby Brissett is moving the ball in Arizona, giving more opportunities for touchdowns for Trey Benson. That would be the thing, is if he comes in and takes over this backfield. Not convinced he does, but I think just like I said before, we know where all these guys stand. And
Yep.
Trey Benson's the only one I think that could come in and surprise us with more volume than we were expecting moving forward.
I'll actually take a shot on Chris Rodriguez here, mostly because you like the schedule coming up. He has one of the easiest strength of schedules rest of season. I know Dallas has been better against the run, bringing in Quinton Williams and Kenny Clark, excuse me, has been playing better. Holy cow, we spit it out, playing better as of recent. But um, if he's going to score touchdowns, if he's going to catch passes for this, well, he hasn't been catching passes for this team. I got to be careful what I'm saying here. Basically, I like the matchup, and he's being used as the team's RB1 right now. And if he has a favorable schedule coming up, I'm willing to take the risk on that and say, hey, Chris Rodriguez, he could give himself a few top 20 days here potentially if he racks up the yardage and the touchdowns as well. So I'll take a shot on Chris Rodriguez, but I do like Trey Benson because I'm with you. I think he's kind of the fun mystery box that you can pick out of this tier and say, yeah, if he goes on a hot enough of a streak, we're talking about him above RJ Harvey next week, on the cusp of that B tier. So I don't mind that Trey Benson pick at all. We'll do the same exercise with the E tier here. Alvin Kamara, Devin Neal, Kenneth Gainwell, Aaron Jones, who did leave with an injury, Bashal Tutin, Tony Pollard, and Zach Charbonnet. Pick one that by this time next week, we could be talking about him in the D tier.
I'm going to go back to Bashal Tutin. I said this last week. I still think, ETN didn't look great. Saw similar volume, got the touchdown in this one. He felt like it should have been a good matchup against Tennessee. They obviously destroyed Tennessee, but they didn't do much on the ground. So I think Tutin, right, if we get another week that it could be the Tutin breakout and he has a couple good weeks, knowing that ETN's probably not on this team next year, we could see, a little bit more Bashal Tutin at the end of the year.
I'll go out on a limb and say Kenny Gainwell, mostly because I like the next two matchups coming up here with Baltimore and Miami, two defenses that you could definitely exploit via the run. But really with Kenny Gainwell, what it is if he gets involved in the receiving game, we saw him give you back-to-back weeks of top 10 finishes because he's getting 6 targets in those 2 games. So if they keep him involved in the passing attack, if he rips off a big run, even finds the end zone as well, again, he's a guy where you're looking and you're like, I don't know, do Kareem's 14 carries for 40 yards and 2 receptions for 10 yards mean that much more to Kenny Gainwell's explosiveness and 8 targets in the passing game, right? Like those are the chips that we're going to be balancing over the next few weeks here. So, yeah, I don't mind Bashal Tutin. I definitely think he's the fun, explosive play that you could pick there. But if we're just talking like practical, I think Kenny Gainwell definitely could be that guy over the next couple weeks. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, where you can get into the game this season playing Pick'em. It's extremely simple. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more of your favorite players. For example, I'll pick the higher on Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Xavier Worthy. If I played $10 and got all 3 of them right, I would win $60 just by watching football. And that's the beauty of Pick'em. You can track your picks and your wins while you enjoy the game. Now, if you're not on Underdog yet, scan the QR code on your screen or use our code FELLAS when you sign up, because new customers will get $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5 on the app. Plus, Underdog will give you a free pick to use in your first entry. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. Alrighty, let's flip it on over to the wide receivers now. Took some time perusing through the running backs there. We might be a little bit snappier here on the wide receivers, trying to cover as many players as possible for you all, again, to get you set for your rest of season matchups. The S tier, really no surprise who's in this tier. It's Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jamar Chase, Rashee Rice, CeeDee Lamb, and Puka Nacua. Maybe the question I'll ask here, do CeeDee Lamb and Puka Nacua just kind of belong in their own tier? Because it seems like the difference that they have is they are complemented by phenomenal wide receiver 2s in their offenses, and George Pickens and Devontae Adams that are chipping away enough from their production where it doesn't seem like they can chase a Jackson Smith-Njigba or Jamar Chase or Rashee Rice for that matter, who's getting a crap ton of volume as well. Are they just kind of like pity shoves in here because they're definitely too good for the A tier, or maybe should we even be considering them in a tier of their own?
Yeah, honestly, a tier of their own probably would have been the worst, that we could go back and do, just because,
right,
like you said, Puka surprisingly only 1 game over 15.5 PPR points since the bye.
Right.
So
this is mostly what he can do. We saw what he could do through the first 6 weeks.
100%. I mean, it's still like 7 for 75, 7 for 97, 7 for 97, 5 for 64 and a touchdown. Right. I mean, he's still putting up good stats. It's just when you're comparing to, like you said, JSN, Jamar Chase, and Rashee Rice, it is a half a step down from that.
Yeah, it's especially when I'm just going to transition to the A tier, especially when his counterpart Devontae Adams has caught 14 touchdowns this year. When he's catching that many touchdowns, it's tough to see many more falling Puka Nakua's way, it was the big issue that we were all worried about, right? It was, okay, you bring in a guy like Devontae Adams, who's phenomenal in the red zone, and if we want to see Puka make that leap to be the wide receiver 1 overall this year, you got to see the touchdowns start falling his way, and that just has not been happening despite good, like, statistical production from Puka Nacua recently. George Pickens does slot in ahead of Devontae Adams, but man, oh man, George Pickens has just been on an absolute tear as well. He's been keeping pace, if not outpacing CeeDee Lamb as well. So, there's a case where you could even say CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens belong in the same tier, but that's why, though, again, it feels like we could just do JSN, Jamar Chase, Rashee Rice, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua in their own tier, George Pickens, Devontae Adams in their own tier, and then the rest of this tier, which is Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and T. Higgins. And Cameron, we talked about this team a little bit in the running back segment, but it really, really makes me happy to say that we do have A.J. Brown officially back for the Philadelphia Eagles. He has given you 2 monstrous weeks now, back-to-back weeks. The question is A.J. Brown actually back?
He should be. I mean, the schedule dictates we should throw in the ball, but his talent dictates we should throw in the ball. His contract dictates we should throw in the ball, and yet they haven't won the last 2 games, so I could see them completely abandoning it all, going right back to Saquon getting 3.5 yards per carry, and then, just because they're playing the Chargers, who have been sliding a little bit as of late, and Vegas getting the 2 wins and being like, all right, we're a running team again, and we don't see A.J. Brown. So it's frustrating, but what we've seen the last 2 weeks, you have no choice, right? He's in your lineup. You have him in there. You're hoping that this is what we get, because hey, he could have back-to-back top 5, top 3 weeks for me. It's just really hard because you've seen the other side of the coin the 2 weeks prior, 2.3 and 8.4 fantasy points. So at least we've seen double-digit targets, 7+ receptions the last 3 games. So you have that to build off of, and let's just hope that it stays. I guess hope is the best thing you got for AJ Brown right now.
That hope is the best thing you got. And you look at, it's a winnable game against the Raiders coming up here. If the Raiders beat the Eagles, man, oh man, it is like meltdown city in Philadelphia. But you like the matchup there, especially if Saquon Barkley still can't get going on the ground. You like the matchup there with Vegas. That's exploitable. The game with the Commanders, obviously exploitable. You could throw all over the Washington Commanders defense. Buffalo's where you get a little bit concerned, but the Eagles could be chasing points enough in that game where they're going to need to throw the football regardless. So it is not the worst schedule in the world for A.J. Brown. It is definitely like we'll call it a top 7 schedule rest of season for the Philadelphia Eagles. You do like it for A.J. Brown. I want to touch on Amon-Ra St. Brown too, because this is going to feel incredibly low given how really good the line schedule is rest of season against the Rams, where they're going to be chasing points. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who have been bleeding points like crazy to wide receivers, and then Minnesota is a quote negative matchup, but like let's not pretend that the Vikings are a bad matchup for wide receivers here, right? So because their offense literally can't put up points. I digress. Is the reason he is so low is that there's just uncertainty around his status for week 14? Is that the biggest thing right now?
Yeah, 100%. I think I have him the lowest. I have him down at wide receiver 15, and it really is. Sure. They said this is going to be a 1 to 2 week injury, and it's a high ankle sprain. Ankle sprain. I almost say I'm not 100% sure if it's high or low, but that just concerns me moving forward. If he misses 2 weeks and you don't get him till week 16, right? I mean, when we're talking about 4 weeks left, that's a pretty big bummer, and especially if he doesn't come back fully healthy. If he's fully healthy for me, he's in that CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua tier, right? That's where he falls. If we know for sure he's playing in 100% week 14, that's where he is. This is just a health concern for me with Amon.
Yeah, and I'm probably a little bit aggressive. I'm hoping this is a 1 week injury, because even with a 1 week injury, I can't put him any lower than T. Higgins, right? I mean, he's still way too freaking good to put any lower than that. But yeah, I got rolled up on by a lineman. So yeah, you are worried about this potentially being a multi-week injury. So just wanted to make sure we touched on that. Of like, it's not that we're like crucifying Amon-Ra St. Brown here. It's more of like, hey, there's an injury here. We need to acknowledge reality and also be aware of that as we're creating these rankings as well. Jalen Waddle, you're getting consistency there. Nico Collins, you're getting consistency there. Even with CJ Stroud back, a perfectly fine game, and almost had another touchdown against the Colts this last week too. And T. Higgins with Joe Burrow back, with how much this team is going to continue. Joe Burrow, 32 freaking pass attempts in the first half against the Ravens. If they're going to be throwing the ball that freaking much, T. Higgins is going to be in the A tier here. Like, people can debate a wall as far as I'm concerned, because the volume for both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins is going to be otherworldly if they're throwing this much throughout the rest of the season.
No, he definitely didn't skip a beat, that's for sure.
No, not at all. So we'll move on to the B tier, where it's Ladd McConkey, Teteroa McMillan, Devonta Smith, Drake London, Chris Olave, Emeka Egbuka, and Jameson Williams. Let's start with Drake London here. Again, another injury player, so maybe we don't have to take a ton of time on this, but what about this ranking for you is his status coming back, but also the reality of just like, you got Kirk O'Chains in the game now. Not that Kirk wasn't horrific, but it's not the effort we're going to sling it around the yard mentality of Michael Penix.
Yeah, and it really is. He had the same injury as Ricky Pearsall did earlier in the year, and that took Ricky, 7 weeks to come back from. So if he does make it back, I'm not 100% convinced that he is full health. We saw DK Metcalf play through it last year. Didn't look the same second half of the year. So that's my concern, as a guy who already isn't a tremendous separator and relies on that athleticism to be a half step slower, to not be able to jump like that. That's just kind of what's running through my head with the injury. Yeah. And then on top of that, last season, 7 games with Kirk O'Chains, 1 top 25 finish. Not great. And
not great, Bob.
If you've gotten used to Michael Penix and Drake London, you're used to this, maybe a top 5 guy, and you come back to Kirk, it could just be a little bit of a wake up call. So yeah, I want to put him higher. I love Drake London. I want to put him higher. I just, with the injury in Kirk starting, I just don't know if I can.
I think I'm willing to be a bit more bullish, just because they're moving around his they have been utilizing. Oh my gosh, they've been moving around his utilization within the offense, right? Getting him more looks in the slot, some easier completions for Kirk Cousins, hopefully, when he does come back healthy. But again, how healthy is he going to be when he comes back? What is this team going to be fighting for? So yeah, I don't blame anybody who's pushing Drake London lower in their rankings. I'm still holding optimism, though, where I think he's like very confidently in this tier. But if he does come back and he gives me a week where he's fully healthy and he gives you a phenomenal performance, I think he's going to find himself in that A tier very, very quickly afterwards. So we'll have to see, though. But again, he's one worth monitoring over the next few weeks. I want to go backwards one step, because I brought up Devonta Smith before Drake London, just to do a bit. We didn't talk about him with AJ Brown necessarily, but do you have concerns still for Devonta Smith in regards to AJ Brown? Is it kind of the same narrative that you're worried about here? The Eagles could go back to running the football since they've lost their last 2 games. If they are going to throw the ball, it has been AJ Brown, though. Again, Ty's talked about how you don't want to oversimplify it to the point that AJ Brown's the man beater and Devonta Smith is a zone beater, but that's where they both excel and thrive, right? So maybe just give me like your 2 cents on how close he and AJ Brown, Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, are rest of season, with the concerns that you may or may not have around the Eagles offense.
Yeah, I mean, they've both been just so up and down that it really comes down to whose week is it. And obviously you're not necessarily going to know going in. I think you can get a hint based off the team plays more man or zone, but it still doesn't seem to always matter, right? When you go into it. So
what I thought of Jalen Johnson coming back this week could be a big difference for that passing attack. Yeah. Here's AJ Brown going absolutely nutso.
100%. And like 2 weeks ago against Dallas, Devonta Smith, 11 targets, 6 catches, 89 yards, right? If he scores a touchdown that week, then you're
really dancing.
Right. And the touchdowns are going to probably be the big variance between the two. And obviously if you're betting on touchdowns, AJ Brown's the guy to bet on. So that would be too why his ranking is higher than Devonta Smith, and why his ranking has been higher than Devonta Smith their entire time together.
Alrighty, now we can keep it moving on forward in the rankings here. The next player I did want to make sure we talk about is Emeka Egbuka. We've been on a worrisome tailspin here. I think prior to 2 weeks ago, I mean, we were talking about Emeka Egbuka as like an A-tier wide receiver. Like, it's all right. It's only been 2 games. Let's calm down. Let's collect ourselves. Let's not panic too much yet based on what he gave us at the start of the season. But I mean, now we've got 4 straight weeks of just like hardly even flexible production out of Emeka Egbuka. Is this tailspin worrisome? I mean, I don't even want to ask that question. What am I trying to ask here? Is there room for Emeka Egbuka to bounce back, or is this kind of what we're just going to get rest of season, because we're ranking him basically in the middle? of if we were to just continue getting 4 for 40 rest of season, we're talking about Emeka Egbuka as more of a middle of the C tier player. But if we're talking about the Emeka Egbuka we got at the start of the season, we're talking about him in the A tier, no question.
Definitely. And I do just want to give Ty his flowers. I tried to call Emeka Egbuka a sell after week 2. Didn't look good for about 4 weeks. Ty timed it perfectly. Dude goes out, gets 7 catches, 163 yards, and a touchdown, and then puts up 6 games under 8 half PPR fantasy points out of his last 7. Like, I mean, it's been truly gross. 1 game since week 6 under 5 with more than 5 receptions. 1 game over 60 receiving yards. Only 1 touchdown in the span. It's just, I don't know if he's getting the target, so it's confusing, right? Because he's getting the volume.
I mean, Baker Mayfield hasn't been playing that well.
No, he has not, but he's still seeing 8+ targets in every game since week 7. So it's which way are you going to go? I'm going to lean on the side of I don't think we necessarily see the same type of upside because he was overproducing from a touchdown perspective during those first couple of weeks. But they have 5 must-win games. 4 of them are in division, and the other one's against Miami. So if there ever is a time for it to start clicking, they would need it to be now. But yeah, I think he's good for probably 2 more boom weeks, but I don't think it's going to be overly consistent throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge Baker Mayfield did leave week 12 with the left shoulder injury, right? He did play this last week, so I understand there's some of that in the balance of all of this too, but it's not like it's been good prior to that shoulder injury as well. But yeah, it's getting worrisome here. If we get another tail, I think the more tailspins we kind of get here from Emeka Egbuka, like I wouldn't be surprised if he just kind of falls a tier by a tier for the next 2 weeks here as we kind of make our way towards the end of the season. So yeah, just something to consider with Emeka Egbuka there. We might even be ranking him a little bit too aggressively based on what we've been seeing as of recent. Let's keep it on moving to the C tier. Michael Pittman, Justin Jefferson, Rome Odunze, Terry McLaurin, Brian Thomas Jr., and Marvin Harrison Jr. make up this tier. We could spend some time talking about all of these dudes. I think they've all got big old question marks in some capacity here. I want to start with Justin Jefferson, though. Do you bench him at this point? Let's just be frank. Our names aren't even Frank. Second time I made that joke. You can turn off the show now. I see bench. Like, do you bench him at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I was telling you earlier, I have a dynasty league, and at the beginning of the season, if you asked me if I was going to have this conversation, I would say no way.
Going into week 14,
but I am considering I have to start one of Justin Jefferson, Marvin Harrison, and Brian Thomas, and I don't want to start any of them because Marvin Harrison's coming off the injury, another injury. So it's like, which way do you go? I mean, we still have him as a top 25 wide receiver. So if you got 3 guys ahead, ahead of him, then I think you bench him. I think you still roll him out. But you got to understand. I mean, Washington at least is a good matchup. But you got to understand.
Yeah, it's a good matchup because everybody else could throw over.
Yeah.
I got a quarterback who could throw right now.
It could be really rough. And
Max Brosmer's on his Will Levis out here.
Yeah. No games.
9 is out here ever since making remarks about an alter ego.
Yeah, that was the worst decision you could have possibly made. No games over 80 receiving yards since JJ McCarthy returned. 1 touchdown since he returned. Only 2 games over 5 receptions. So it hasn't been pretty. But at the same time, I think he's okay to continue to roll out. It just feels awful because he was your first pick.
Right. You almost feel obligated to start him for that very reason. But, oh man, I don't.
Not a lot of upside. Not a lot of ceiling left.
No. Like when we talk about our weekly rankings, I mean, you get the weeks 15 through 17 to get the Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders at 14, which you named. You get Dallas at week 15. You get the Giants at week 16. Again, the line. It's 4 good matchups here that they should be able to take advantage of.
But it doesn't matter.
but it might not matter. It might not matter at all. Which is just it's a tragedy It is a tragedy that we even have to have this conversation with such a good schedule that it might not matter because literally nobody can throw the football in this Minnesota Viking. At this point, like, go bring back. Did the Vikings sign Josh? Correct me if I'm wrong. Did they sign Josh Dobbs this last week? The Vikings signed another quarterback.
John Wolford.
They signed Wolford?
Yeah, they brought up from the practice
Oh,
squad.
no, Dobbs is with the Patriots. What am I saying? I swear they signed somebody else.
Wolford was the guy they brought up.
Yeah, okay.
I knew they signed another emergency quarterback.
Anyways, Dobbs is with the Patriots. I was going to say at this point, just go back to what you know, Kevin O'Connell. Just bring back Josh Dobbs. But no, he is with the Patriots. You cannot bring him in. Terry McLaurin has made a little bit of a resurgence here this last week. 96 yards and a score. You're like that moving forward. What's your level of confidence in him rest of season? Because that was nice to see after a season of like basically just assuming he's a complete bust.
Yeah, I think it's feels similar to Bucky Irving. I saw enough that I'm willing to rank him where I would have had preseason. Right, I was lower on Terry preseason.
Yep.
So right around this mid-20s makes sense for me moving forward. You're hoping Jaden's back week 14.
14
as
targets.
of Monday.
Man.
As of Monday, he's not he's not cleared to play. So more likely week 15 if they decide they want to put him back out there. I still don't understand why you would, especially after the injury he had. But I guess he wants to play, and they're
commander.
Yep, they're gonna let him. And then if he gets hurt again, that entire city is gonna riot. They might not have a team.
Oh yeah.
Because you can't do that.
They'll run the front office out of town themselves.
You can't do that to 2 QBs in a row. But 14 targets, 7 receptions. He looked good, and against a good Denver pass defense. Like this wasn't, it wasn't like he rolled out against Tennessee or something. This was a good defense that he showed up against with Marcus Mariota, or Mariota, as Chris Collinsworth was saying on the
Mariota.
I think that I think you can rank him here and have decent confidence that he's back. And you got to remember too, this was his first injury, like this hamstring that he's had all year.
Yep.
Last 5 seasons. So it's not like this is some injury prone guy. You got to imagine they kept him out until he was fully ready to go. He looked at last week. I have confidence in him moving forward.
Yeah, with the volume that he got last week, again, against a good Denver defense, it's enough to go forward thinking, okay, yeah, you slot him in as a very confident flex play here rest of season. We talk about Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr. here. I want to save some Brian Thomas Jr. thoughts for when we get to another Jacksonville Jaguars player that we have in our rankings here. D tier we'll move on to in the meantime. You brought up Marv in terms of the ankle or the foot injury that he sustained this last week. So obviously you keep tabs on that. I don't want to do too much Marvin Harrison Jr. discussion other than, hey, when he came back, he got fed right away in this game, which was a good sign. So Stephon Diggs, Wan'Dale Robinson, Christian Watson, Cortland Sutton, Zay Flowers, Deebo Samuel, Alec Pierce. Shout out Alec Pierce. Never wrong, just early on Alec Pierce. I loved him coming out of his draft class. But let's start with Steph Diggs at the top. When Kayshon Boutte is playing for this Patriots team, I just don't have the same level of confidence in Stephon Diggs. Diggs only has 3 games with more than 60 yards when Kayshon Boutte is in the lineup. He only has 4 games with more than 5 targets in Kayshon Boutte in the lineup. Averaging 52 receiving yards, only 4.7 catches per game. I'm just so hesitant on being optimistic about Stephon Diggs rest of season. You get the bye in week 14. You get Buffalo coming out. Baltimore ain't bad. The Jets ain't bad in week 17. He's just a guy that doesn't excite me. And I look at a lot of other guys in this. Okay, maybe not in this tier, but you look at a Wan'Dale, you look at a Christian Watson, a Cortland Sutton. I'm just like, I just feel like they have higher ceilings than a Stephon Diggs does.
Yeah, and I'm looking at my ranking again. I do think I have him too high. I think he's probably lower.
So you and I are like relatively far apart on Diggs, given the rest of our rankings. You have him at 23, I have him at 27.
I think I'm probably closer to where you're at with Diggs. The more I think about it, just because it's not exciting. a limited ceiling, even with how good Drake May's been playing. Like that's the other thing I think about too. Of Drake May is one of the front runners for MVP, right? It does feel like it's him and Stafford, at least the way it's being pushed, and we're still not getting huge weeks from Diggs. He's an okay flex, right? I'm not excited that he's my flex, but I'm
No.
at the same time, I'm not like, well, this sucks. I got to roll out Stephon Diggs. Like he's gonna get you probably between 7 and 14 half PPR points, somewhere in there. He's not gonna explode and win you a week. Rarely, since week 5, week 4, has he lost you a week except last week. So I think he'll be all right, but I'm not overly excited about having him in my lineup.
Yeah, I just don't roll out Diggs and think you could be a guy who could give me 15 this week. I roll out Diggs and I'm like, please give me 10 so you don't sink my lineup. Versus a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, you roll out with a little bit more hope in terms of the volume falling his way. And we'll see how he does against the Patriots on Monday night. But he's a guy where you roll out and you're like, yeah, you could catch 8 passes for 70 yards tonight and get me 15 PPR points. Christian Watson, big play machine, right? It gave you a big 50-plus yard touchdown against the Lions on Thanksgiving. He can create explosives for you. I just don't think Stephon Diggs is a guy who's going to create those kind of explosives for your fantasy football team because he's not doing it on the NFL field right now. Courtland Sutton is the other name I want to talk about here. I know I talked about Courtland Sutton potentially have a higher ceiling. I think I agree on that, even though I have him ranked lower than Steph Diggs. But you're still very optimistic on Courtland Sutton here. You've got him at 26. I've got him at 30. Give me your pro Courtland Sutton case here because at one point we were talking about Troy Franklin being the Denver Broncos wide receiver to have.
Yeah, and I think they can coexist. Sean Payton's becoming one of those coaches that's just infuriating for fantasy production.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, what are you doing week in, week out? Sutton feels similar to Terry McLaurin. Of you're not going to get crazy volume, you're not going to get crazy yards. It'll be consistent, but I think Sutton's more likely to score touchdowns moving forward. Not an awesome end of the year schedule. Vegas, Green Bay, Jacksonville, Kansas City. Again, he's one that I might just be a little higher because giving him the benefit of the doubt because what we saw last year, what we saw earlier in the season. But I don't think he's just going to vanish. I think he's the best playmaker on this offense. I think they need to go to him. So hopefully Sean Payton figures it out. But yeah, it's really he's probably going to be a guy who averages 5 for 50 and then a touchdown every other week the rest of the season.
Yeah, I have no strong feelings on Courtland Sutton. I think is how I'm going to sum up my thoughts. Let's quickly wrap out the rest of this tier here. I don't want to talk about people for too long here. Deebo Samuel, you just kind of it's more of a Terry McLaurin thing than it is a Deebo Samuel thing. I don't know how many times we want to have the same conversation about Zay Flowers. You can't even predict when he's going to be good. And when he is quote unquote good, he's giving you like the wide receiver 24 production. He's not going to be a guy who leapfrogs into like a top 20 player. So, right. I don't know. I don't know how many times we can have this conversation. What do we have there?
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. I'm like, we have to drop it here somewhere, don't we? I'm like, I feel like that's exactly what it is with Zay Flowers. We just have the same conversation over and over and over again. But Alec Pierce, hey, shout out, man.
Yeah.
Out of the day, Alec Pierce has been a top 15 wide receiver in half PPR formats in 3 of his last 4 games.
Yeah,
shout out.
He's a guy that next week
White Boy of the Year.
We could really be having the conversation of should him and Pittman be switched next week, depending on how things go. Like that's just where it is. And you brought up Brian Thomas and another one of these wide receivers we're going to talk about. We could be having the same conversation about them after this next week. And
let's do it. That's the conversation I want to have.
Probably already should. Like I'm going to be honest. I'm holding out so much hope for Brian Thomas, but we probably should already be having the conversation that Jacoby Myers should be where he is, and he's where Jacoby Myers is.
I was going through my rankings, so I'll quick read off the tier for the audio people. Quentin Johnson, Jacoby Myers, DK Metcalf, Khalil Shakir, Jawan Jennings, Troy Franklin, Jaden Higgins, Luther Burden make up the E tier here in our wide receivers. When I was going through and ranking my rest of the season players, I was shocked to see Jacoby Myers down in like the 30 to 35 range. Not because I think he should be like a top 25 guy, but after what we saw this last week, Cameron, Jacoby Myers getting all the volume, Brian Thomas only 3 targets. if they run it back next week, I think you're 100% right. We're talking about these two essentially being D-tier players alongside one another. And again, I'm hesitant to be too reactionary after 1 week. I always want to see multiple weeks strung together before I can conclude a trend and make a conclusion. But if this is what we're going to get from Brian Thomas Jr., if this regime still isn't going to prioritize him, I mean, they've seen enough in the early half of the season. Like, why wouldn't you just keep rolling out Jacoby Myers then? Like, he's a guy where maybe he should be ahead of Zay Flowers in the D tier. I think we need to have the conversation. I really think we do.
Yeah, I that's really what my ranking is. I'm going to give him 1 week. No Sauce Gardner this next week for Indianapolis. If it doesn't look good, I really think you have to make the switch, because my hope is that this week he was hurt, and I think it's just my personal bias that wouldn't allow me to put him lower, that wouldn't allow me to put Jacoby Myers higher. But if we see it again on the field, then you just don't have a choice at that point, and that's what stinks. And I'm hoping that they start to get him involved. You got to think, at the very least, you want to make him look decent so you can move him. But I guess they are in the playoff hunt. They are looking good, so they're going to keep trying to win games. And so if Brian Thomas isn't as big of a part of that, he was out there a lot at least. But yeah, if Jacoby Myers gets all the volume again, him and Brenton Strange, then yeah, I think we're going to have that conversation next week.
I mean, that was the pecking order, right? It was Jacoby Myers, Brenton Strange, and then Brian Thomas Jr. And if they run it back 2 weeks in a row, we're running out of time this season to make the adjustment. The adjustment's going to be made then. We're running out of time to say, no, Jacoby Myers is the J. It's no use to you if you don't make it into the semifinals, and then week 16, we're finally like, oh, no, Jacoby Myers, right? Jacoby Myers should be ranked ahead. It's no use to you at that point. So we're going to have to be more, what's the word I'm looking for here? More sporadic with our changes here in terms of what we're seeing and applying it more quickly than we would be in like a week 1, 2, or 3, right? As we get to the latter half of the season, we just have to start making these changes more rapidly and more aggressively. The other name I want to talk about is Jauan Jennings. Shame on you and Ty for being so low on Jauan Jennings, the man who's been the wide receiver 19 in 3 of his last 4 games. Jauan Jennings, you have him at 39, Ty at 37. I have him at 31. Just give me the quick case on that, because when I see that and I see with Ricky Pearsall being back, it's still been Jauan Jennings. I mean, hey, I'm not defending the guy because he's a good guy. Sounds like he's been running his mouth. Sounds like he could be catching hands here in the next few weeks against opposing defenses if he keeps running his jaw. Rumors out, which is just a crazy post-game narrative to come out with. But
no kidding.
Hey, if he's giving me fantasy points, though, at some point I got to acknowledge that and say we might be ranking him too low.
Yeah, and that might be what it is. I think maybe having the bye has a little bit to do with it.
Sure.
Brock Purdy hasn't given me much to be hopeful about since returning. It looked better, but not great.
Looked better this past week.
Ricky's
weather wasn't great either.
Yeah, Ricky will have another week back to hopefully get healthy coming back against Tennessee. So I think I just factored in all of those, probably a little too much.
Sure.
Probably shouldn't be below guys like Khalil Shakir. Shouldn't be below, Quentin Johnson. So, yeah, so probably was, a little too pessimistic on Jauan Jennings.
Sure.
But I don't think I'd move him up a tier personally.
Okay, so yeah, because I'd be considering him in like the Alec Pierce range, right?
Yep.
When we see what Alec Pierce has been doing, I would probably move him up there. Like Alec Pierce is a guy where I would probably, if I'm doing my rankings over, had a little bit more time to chew on this after the last week. Again, we're recording this on Monday. We haven't even watched Monday Night Football yet. I would potentially be ranking Alec Pierce ahead of Zay Flowers and moving Jauan Jennings up into that same range as well. So just things to consider as we wind down the season here. Just want to make it clear to you all. I probably should have mentioned this sooner in the episode, but we are going to be condensing down to 2 weeks rest of the season. We're going to bring you rest of season rankings videos like this on Tuesday, and then we're going to not do a Wednesday video rest of season, just with the current stage of life that we are in, and just like wanting to make sure we provide really, really good content for you all. We're going to condense to 2 episodes just the rest of the season. We'll go 2 episodes throughout the offseason, but then once we get back into the summer months, we will be back up to 3 shows a week. So just so you all know, there will not be a show coming tomorrow, but we will still be back on Thursday to help get your lineup set for week 14. So again, hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell as well, so you know when that content is out, and you know that we are going on a little bit of a condensed schedule here moving forward. We'll still have lives on Sunday mornings, so fear not. You can follow us on our other socials as well. FFL is over on Twitter. The FFL is over on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you're a YouTube person through and through, bless you. We have got a page for you, Fantasy Football Fellas shorts over there, all exclusive content that is not recut up podcast content, all unique content over there for you all. You can follow Cam and I on our personal socials as well. I am at Lucas Wencl on XCamLawFFF for Cameron. We'll be back on Thursday. Again, nothing tomorrow. We'll be back on Thursday to help set your lineups for week 14. 18 different players, whether you should be starting or sitting them in week 14 to help get you to the fantasy football playoffs. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, y'all. Stay healthy, y'all. Gosh, I cannot spit that out today.
Deuces.